Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you after Christmas. I hope all is going well. And yeah, here we are. First recording back after Christmas.
Yeah, it was good, man. This time of season's always easy. Well, it's easier, right, to think through what we should be grateful for, and thus I'm probably in a lighter mood that I normally am because usually I'm complaining about things. So
Yeah,
it's
you're usually a kind of a dick and like
kind
grumpy
of a
and like all the
dick.
things that are going wrong. And
Yep.
today you
All
seem
the
like
things that are wrong.
you
Yeah.
seem like you're pretty optimistic and hopeful. So
I know you're joking, but we talk about this even in the Iron
wait, hold
Council
on.
quite a
Hold
bit.
on a second. What
Yeah.
makes you think I'm joking? All right, go
But
ahead. Go ahead.
honestly, like we joke about this, and I mean, you mentioned this. Yeah, I've heard you mention this multiple times in the Iron Council. The kind of caliber guys that we're surrounded by, the kind of guys that join the Iron Council, they're guys that are getting after it in life. And when we do have a tendency sometimes those guys to always be less reflective and more focused on like fixing and progressing. And sometimes it's really valuable for us to sit back and just go, hey, you know what? Life's good and things are
Mm-hmm.
going good and we're doing okay. Not to rest necessarily, but to at least celebrate and have some gratitude for what we do have. So
Yeah,
I struggle with that at least. So
I struggle with that too. The other thing I struggle with is that I can fixate fairly well for better or worse. And so I'll see
yeah,
a target in front of me, and usually it revolves around business. That's my go-to. Business,
yeah,
making money. That's my go-to. I've been pretty dedicated to being in the gym, pretty dedicated to jujitsu. Like there's three or four things, hunting. There's three or four things that I can fixate on, which is good because that's why I accomplish those things, because I can fixate and be distraction free.
yeah.
I tend to forget that the quote unquote distractions are the actual things that really matter, like your wife and kids, your friends, your
Yeah.
spiritual growth and development. So that's the one thing that not the one thing, that is one thing that I struggle with too.
When you get fixated on those things, do you also lose strategic focus, at least on the business side? I've noticed I've latched on to certain things and put too much weight on them because I'm like, no, this is how it should be done. This is the correct way. And I really like latch onto it. But the thing I'm lacking onto in the grand scheme of things isn't as strategically important as other things. And I chose the wrong battle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To give too much attention to.
I tend to be a pretty intuitive person. And I think more often than not, and somebody's welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, I tend to get it pretty right when it comes to what I should be focusing on. Like I
Mm.
tend to be intuitively know, hey, that's where the attention needs to go. But that said, I am not a strategic person, and I never have been.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We
and
were
and
talking about this just a couple weeks ago in the Iron Council, where you're kind of like, hey,
yeah,
I follow where my gut is, where I'm at, and kind of in the moment,
yeah, yeah.
strategic focus is not your game.
So when you say, do I lose strategic focus? I never had it. Therefore, I don't have anything to lose. No, I'm kind of like the balls to the wall, throw it all the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. I kind of tend to be more that guy. So I
Yeah.
probably should be more strategic in the way I go about things. Or alternatively, get the right people in. You're more strategic than I am. Reese is way more strategic than I am. Chris with the events is strategic. Drew is strategic with the funnels and everything. Like the guys that are around me are very strategic in these things, and I'm not. So I'm probably a point of frustration for you guys because you're saying here,
I'm not
like,
saying
here's the
anything.
map, here's the thing, here's the, and
I'm
I'm
just
like,
joking.
cool, just do it. And you're like, well, I need your input. I'm like, you don't, just go, just do it.
Yeah, just
So
execute. Yeah.
yeah. So either I need to focus on it or make sure that I'm surrounded by strategic people.
Yeah. Well, which is so powerful in that statement alone. It's like, know where our strengths are, know what we're good at, and then where we're not as good or passionate about, because that's the other thing. Let's be frank. Like, Folkman wrote a book called The Extraordinary Leader. And the whole premise of that book is your impact as a leader is greater when you focus on what you're good at. And the reason why is because what you're good at is also what you're passionate about and is
Right.
also what you enjoy doing. So double down on the areas that you're great. And then instead of focusing on like, oh, this area that I'm not so good at, well, guess what? It's probably an area you don't care about and you
Yes.
prefer not to operate in. So surround yourself with the appropriate people and then you get best of both worlds.
I think the key is just knowing that just because you're not a certain way, that it doesn't mean that side of the business or that side of your life goes away. You still need to make sure it is addressed. It just doesn't always have to be addressed by you. That's where we get into trouble, where we're like, well, I'm not strategic, so I'm not going to do any of that. Like, well,
Let me throw my hands
that's
up.
a problem.
Yeah, you still
that's
have
a
to
problem.
preside and make sure it happens.
Yeah, good point. Well, cool, man. Well, let's get into some questions. Cool. Actually, before we do, just want to mention that the Iron Council is open for a few more days. You'd mentioned that earlier. And you said the guys in there are really getting after it in life. That's because they volunteered and self-selected themselves that way. They've gone through a selection process just by investing in themselves. And I'm not saying everybody in there is hyper successful and everybody you're going to get value from if you join the Iron Council. It's not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is that 100% of the people in the Iron Council are interested in self-development. We know that. And we know they're doing more than just listening to a podcast, more than just reading a book. They've actually invested real money, their efforts, their hard work, their money into being there. And that's a great self-selector. So if you want to be around other guys who at a minimum care about self-development and at best hyper successful, guys like Reese, guys like Drew, guys like Chris, guys like Alan, guys like Jay, like the people that I'm talking about, they are hyper successful. And a lot of them suggest that the Iron Council has a big role to play in that. So take that for what it's worth. We're open at orderman.com/Iron Council.
Cool. So we're fielding questions from Facebook. That's facebook.com/group/orderman. Kyle Olsfolk, tips for transitioning from a construction superintendent back to a foreman and co-working with people I formerly managed and managing them still calling me and managing them still calling me. I don't understand what he meant by that, but
maybe managing them, maybe they're still calling him a manager or something.
Yeah,
I don't
probably.
know. One thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if this is happening in your case, but so I don't want to jump to conclusions on this, but I have noticed this in a way. If you've got promoted to, let's say, management, like you're talking about, they may consider you part of them, part of they, right? That those guys over there.
Yeah.
And it might be they might view it as being at direct odds with their own self-interest as workers, contractors, whatever it is. So you might have that hurdle to overcome. I only say that because I didn't quite understand the last sentence that you had shared there. Here's what I would suggest is just go with the heart to serve. Just go with the heart to serve. Hey guys, I'm here to serve you. You don't need to put yourself above anybody. Be careful of providing and offering unsolicited feedback. Well, I guess if you're a foreman
position,
but if you're a foreman, there is going to be some feedback you need to give, but just be very aware of how that might be perceived. I would say that there might need to be some rapport that needs to be built, because I imagine between where you are boots on ground and upper management, there's a divide. There's probably a physical divide, right? You're in an office space or somewhere off site and they're on site, but then there's also that mental divide of, hey, us versus them mentality. So in order to bridge that, you're going to need to build up some rapport and make yourself, to the degree that you can, and you shouldn't do it fully, but to the degree that you can, make yourself one of them again, instead of one of those guys, the suits, the corporate suits, right? But yeah, I think just the encompassing answer to that question is go with the attitude of service, get to know your guys on a deeper level, just beyond what their skills are in the construction trade. And I think if you keep those at the forefront of your mind, it will help you make good decisions, whatever those decisions end up being, good decisions on a daily basis to connect more deeply with these guys that you're now serving in a different capacity.
Yeah, for sure. One of the more powerful ways to create a sense of team belonging, right? And that's kind of what I'm hearing here is like, how does Kyle get aligned with this team members and ensure that they're a team, right? And he's part of that team, is having a unified focus on what you're focused on. So you may have to change your thought process a little bit too, right? You've been a construction superintendent and your focus has been this. Well, you're part of this team now. So how does the team win? And how do you show up to ensure that that team's winning? And are you unified with that team? And do you understand their needs, desires, and challenges that they're addressing and approaching those from a position of service? And how do you help them
Yeah.
win? And that
And
will be
also,
genuine.
and also with getting to know their needs, desires, and wishes, the best way to figure that out is to ask them genuinely. So, Kip, if you're one of the guys and I'm your foreman, a question I might ask is, hey, man, I'm over here now, different environment. Are there some things I need to be aware of that maybe I didn't see in this other position? And then just shut up and listen. And I don't need to defend. I don't need to say why management chose to do whatever they chose to do. All I need to do is just be quiet and listen and just say, hey, Dan, thanks for sharing. That gives me some insight I hadn't considered before. Or, hey, were there some things that management was doing that posed a challenge for you that now I'm here with you guys? I might be able to help bridge that gap. Now, I can't promise I can do that, but that's something I'm interested in doing. Like, help me out. And you're going to get good feedback, but you're also going to show people that you're humble and you're not one of them. Like, you genuinely want to know and serve.
Yeah. Kyle Matheson, don't have a question, but more of a thank you for all that you have brought to this community. Your words ring incredibly true to me, and I have learned much in the past year from the men in this group. Thanks for the movement and keep kicking ass, brother.
Right on. You're welcome. I mean, that's why we're here, right? To serve you guys, to help you win. So when I hear from guys like you and other people who are winning and succeeding and implementing what we're teaching, that's awesome. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah. All right. Dwayne Jones, Ryan and Kip. Another don't have a question. Dwayne, appreciate you guys. Advice. No, I promise I'm not. I don't want to let's make sure we actually have some questions here. Let me read ahead. All right. Richard Ray. As the new year
let's
approaches,
hear this. I think it's important we hear this, and not for our own egos.
I don't want to downplay it, but
and that's what I think is, like, if he's paying a compliment and he feels like he's being served, like, I actually would like to hear it, not from my own ego, but he shared it. Like, let's hear it.
Yeah. All right. Dwayne Jones, Ryan and Kip don't have a question, but I wanted to say thank you for the reply from last week's Ask Me Anything. I truly appreciate the advice. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, that's why we're here. So hopefully it helped.
All right, Richard Ray, here we go. As the new year approaches, can you share some insights into what it looks like to hold each other accountable in our groups where guys are trying to improve and strive in areas of character development, fitness for the year ahead? Do you find certain questions are better to ask than others in assessing how guys are doing in their personal pursuits and where they've been asked for accountability?
Yeah. So I guess based on the last little caveat you threw in there, they have asked for accountability. It sounds like, correct, Kip?
Totally. Yeah. Okay, that's my understanding as well.
All right. So if you don't have that, that's going to be a little bit more challenging, but let's actually address both. Let's assume that you do have some level of accountability built in or some understanding that we're going to hold each other accountable. One question that I really like that will flip this entire thing on its head is, what are you struggling with the most right now? That's a really good question, because if you think about when you ask, hey, how are things going? Number one, it's very, very broad. So I don't really know where to go to answer that because there's so much going on in my life. Even if it's subconsciously, I don't know how to answer that question. Number two, it almost sounds like hyperbole, like, or not hyperbole, rhetorical. Like, how's it going? Oh yeah, it's good. Like, it's just a rhetorical question. You're not really seeking for the answer. So you're not going to want to elicit a great answer from it. So that's why, like, flipping on its head a little bit and catching somebody off guard is, hey, Joe, what are you struggling with most right now? And then I would say, get even more specific. What are you struggling most right now with your fitness goals? What are you struggling with most right now in connecting with your wife? What are you struggling with most right now with your children? the more specific you can get with your questions, the better answers you're going to elicit. If you just say, hey, how's it going? As a man, what I hear is I'm supposed to respond with good, things are fine. I'm not supposed to complain. I'm not supposed to gripe. I'm not supposed to really get into the details. You actually probably, at least in my interpretation, don't really want the answer to that question. And so it's like, hey, I'm good, and give each other a high five, and we can both go on about our day and say that we checked in on each other. But the spirit is just not quite there, the spirit or the intent of the message. So the better question is, what are you struggling with most right now? Number two, what are you doing about it? You know, you're struggling with locking in your diet. As an accountability, quote unquote, partner, sometimes we think that we're supposed to come in and rescue and rush and save. No, you're
Give them the
supposed to,
idea.
yeah, you're just supposed to hold themselves accountable. Not like, I'm not even holding you account. How could I do that? You're a grown ass man. How am I going to hold you accountable? Am I going to threaten to take money from you? Am I going to threaten to beat the shit out of you if you don't? Like, what could I possibly do that would hold you to your word? I can't. You have to decide to keep your word, but I can help you do that by asking these good questions. So it might be, Kip, what are you struggling with most right now? And you say, oh man, my diet's been horrible and I'm just really struggling. Now, here's where most men are like,
the donuts.
Yeah. And most men are gonna be like, oh, well, you know, you just got to do X, Y, and Z and then it's solved. Well, bro, he already knows that. Like, he already knows what to do. He's just not doing it. So the better response is, yeah, I really understand that. I struggle too. What are you doing about it? Like, what do you do to keep yourself on track?
Yeah.
And what's working and what isn't? And then the third question, the inevitable question is, okay, so what are you going to do about it? So what are you struggling with? What have you tried? What's working? What isn't? And then what are you going to do about it? Those questions right there are so much better than these, hey, let's just, you know, I called him and I checked in on him. It's like a checklist of things you're supposed to do. This is actually, I really care about you. I want you to win. And I want you to find solutions to your own problems.
Yeah, totally. This is such a, we could actually, I think we could literally spend an entire hour on this subject of accountability. One thing that comes to mind that I think is important is get super laser clear on what is a commitment versus what is not. And I'm kind of thinking this more from a corporate perspective, but I don't think it's any different in a social setting. The reality of it, this happens all the time, is, we'll be in a leadership meeting and Ryan goes, hey, you know what, Kip, what would be really great is, if we did X, and I go, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. And then we move on.
Yeah.
Well, oh, hold on. Stop. Everyone stop. Okay. Are we doing that? Are we not doing this? Is that a good idea? Was that a softball? Like, yeah, sure, Ryan, when time permits, I'll maybe do that. Like, we need to get really clear when we make commitments and what they are, because that's kind of the first step. Well, I don't know if it's the first step, but it's one of those early steps of accountability is my outward expression to you, Ryan, of what I'm committed to doing. And it can't be this elusive, like, yeah, I need to stop eating donuts, or like, yeah, I should eat better. No. That's, we don't do that kind of shit, right? Like, I need to be communicating to you going, I have an issue with my diet. I am committed to doing X, and I'm communicating it. It's black and white, as my accountability partner, what I'm committing to doing. And now there's no internal, like, psychoanalyzing justification in my own mind 3 days later of like, well, I thought it was a good idea when it was convenient. And you know what I mean? Like, it's gray what I'm committing to. So we got to be super laser clear on what we're committing to, so that way we can honor that commitment. The second part, and this, like, obviously I'm not even talking to you, but we're talking to Richard here. So, like, Richard, one thing that I've been focused on a lot over the last couple of years, and this is a conversation we have with battle team leaders, and I'm gonna rip Bubba. I don't know why, it's just like an opportune time to make fun of Bubba. So, but I call it the Bubba
where he can't respond back to you. Is that,
I know,
what you mean by
totally.
that?
Yeah, totally. Or even physically present to defend himself. So, but like, he's super great and rash, right? Like, it's like, handing out bitch tickets and, making guys do burpees and, and it's fun, right? But I think sometimes that's how we see accountability. We go, oh, accountability is me having a tough conversation and calling out Ryan and publicly shaming him in front of 15 guys. And although that might get me somewhere, what that ultimately gets from Ryan or ultimately gets me from someone is compliance. But compliance in the grand scheme of things, when we look about levels of commitment, compliance is like covertly compliant. It is like, I will be compliant as long as I might get shamed, as long as I might look bad, as long as you micromanage me. But it's not self-driven. It's not self-directed. And so the conversation that we need to have with people that we're holding accountable is not one of compliance, but one of commitment. And so I challenge battle team leaders in Iron Council of when a guy's not hitting his numbers, it isn't about the hacks as much as like, we'll try this hack and let's publicly shame you and put you in a hot seat. The conversation should be around, why are they not fully committed and bought in to their commitment? What's blocking them mentally from achieving that?
Or have they even committed, like you were talking about earlier? Are they even committed in the first place to actually something that you can measure?
Exactly. And it's and unfortunately, it's not as simple as like, well, I just need to do it this week. It's not that simple. And I'll share a quick example. I was on a battle team call. This has probably been a year now. And there's a guy had a tactic around. He had a primary tactic, a daily objective, a daily task that he was going to complete.
Come on, man. How long you been doing this? You know what the verbiage is?
I know, I'm backing up in case anyone listening doesn't understand what we're talking about. So this brother's daily commitment was scripture reading and then a secondary of Sunday worship.
Okay.
And we get on the call and his numbers are low, right? And his battle team leader's like, hey, Josh, what's going on, man? Like, I noticed your numbers are really low in this quadrant. And he's like, I've just been really busy. Typical answer, been really busy. I need to double down. I'm good. I'm going to step up this week and I'll make sure to have better numbers. And then we're tempted to move on. Right. And I was like, hey, do you mind if I just ask some questions about your numbers? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, what are you saying to yourself in the moment that you justify not doing it? Because you're out of integrity. And you're never out of integrity without explaining it away. So when everyone listening, when you should go to the gym and you decide not to, you had to tell yourself a reason. Well, not today. I kind of got a cold, or I'm really tired, or you come up with some reason to justify it. Now, sometimes that internal dialogue is something a little bit deeper than I'm just busy. And in this particular instance, I thought it was enough to get to the root of the issue. And the guy was like, oh, I felt like not today. Today's too busy. I'm like, okay. And it didn't really connect. And I was like, how do you feel about yourself? Like, what are you saying about yourself? And his response was, who am I? And I don't deserve to be going to church and reading scripture.
Wow. Yeah.
Now we're talking about a blocker.
Definitely.
We could have tactics all day and that shit's not going to work if the
and you could have all the time in the world and you're not going to do it. You're going to find other things to do if you're feeling like that.
And so now the conversation is, hold on. Okay. Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about if that's true. And if the message of Christ requires someone to be perfect for you to worship. Right. And now we're unblocking something that was preventing this guy from being bought in and fully committed.
Man, I wrote a bunch of notes down here because there's so many different ways or so many thoughts that I had as you were saying that. I really like that question. You know what that requires? Balls.
Like, because we don't want to hear the answer.
No, well, I'm saying from the person asking the question, because you're being by design confrontational. You are deliberately being confrontational, and we are conditioned from the time that we're little kids not to be confrontational. But accountability with other people, part of that is confrontation. Not unnecessarily, not inappropriately, but it is confrontational by nature, by design. Another great question in your scenario that might help you get to the root of it. When he says, yeah, I've just been busy. Most of us will nod and say, oh yeah, I get that because I am too.
Yeah.
Busy with what? Like, help me understand. Well, first, let me back up. How long does it take you to read your scriptures every day? About 15 minutes. Okay. Tell me what 15-minute block you were busy with during the day. Like, I want to know. I want to know what you spent every 15 minutes of the day doing. Well, I don't really have an answer. Right. So that's not the issue. And then you went straight to the issue, which was an awesome series of questioning. I wrote down another thing here when you get compliance versus commitment, because you can shame people, you can push on them. Like you said, really all you're going to get when you do that is you're going to get resentment and rebellion. Resentment and rebellion. They're going to start to resent you or resent the process. And because they resent you in the process and they hate it, they're going to start to rebel. They're going to leave. They're going to ask for no more accountability. They're going to do the opposite just to sabotage it. Resentment and rebellion are built that way. And the last thing I would say with regards to how to hold somebody accountable is you be accountable personally. So Kip, if I'm your accountability partner and I'm having a hard time holding you accountable, you know what I might do? I might get on the phone and say, hey, Kip, last 7-day report. I was really good for 5 days on reading scripture. But you know what? Saturday, I didn't do it. And I didn't do it because we were on vacation and we were traveling. But if we travel in the future, I've downloaded the Bible app on my phone and I'm going to get up 15 minutes before the rest of the family does and make sure I get my reading in. Okay. Now I just told you without you coming to me, I was just accountable to you. And I told you, this is how we do it. This is the expectation without having to tell you this is the expectation. You are now living up to the standard that you expect of that person.
Totally. And I think, and it seems a little cheesy, but I don't know. I don't think it is, but I think it's impactful regardless, is when you hold yourself accountable and you communicate that mess up, you communicate the impact of it.
What do you mean?
You go, hey, you know what? I was traveling. I didn't read my scriptures. And not only this is what I'm doing to correct that moving forward, but by me not reading my scriptures, I didn't honor my commitment. My kids saw me that I wasn't consistent on doing something that I said I would do. It affected how I showed up that day. And I'm present. I'm literally present to my lack of commitment and how that shows up in those around me. I don't think we connect to that enough. I think if we really connected to that, we'd all be hitting the gym on a regular basis.
I agree.
We'd all be doing all the things we should be doing if we were really present to how we show up in the world and how it affects those around us. And trust me, like we talk about this all the time. Like guys are like, oh, I'm not moved, touched, and inspired to go to the gym. Well, that's because you think you going to the gym is about being in shape. But when you go into the gym is setting the precedence for how your kids show up as adults and whether they'll have positive body images of themselves, whether they might feel shameful of how they look because they followed you and your modeling as a parent. And little Timmy may go into adulthood feeling ashamed of himself and kids making fun of him. Okay, well, there you go. There's your motivation to get to the gym. It's a lot more than just like you getting some 6-pack abs. But we don't do that. We focus on the superficial, high level, reasons why we do things. And trust me, it's far bigger than just, hitting the gym.
Agreed. I think a big part of that, the reason we don't do that is in our current culture and society, there is a tendency to reject shame. A great example of that is the body positive movement. Hey, don't feel shame because you're severely obese. Be in love with yourself. Be in love with your body. Yourself. That is beautiful, right? These are the things that we hear because we are rejecting feeling any sort of shame or guilt or remorse. And we want to live in this utopian bliss where we never feel anything that's painful. Well, I would suggest to you that shame and guilt and remorse and sorrow in healthy quantities and healthy doses is actually a good thing for you. You're talking about connecting to the problem on an emotional level, shame, for example, that I didn't do that. you should feel ashamed. And if you felt ashamed and you actually embraced that painful feeling, maybe you would stop certain behavior or start different behavior. And that's what we're after. So we can use emotions for our good. We should not run away and hide from them.
I heard this great quote that they said that the current generation has done something really, really well, but they never finished the entire thought process, and they've become super hyper aware of like their failures and like their feelings and everything else, but they completely failed to actually take action. And you use this analogy all the time. Indicators in the call. Here's a healthy dose versus a non-healthy dose. You got some shame indicators showing up on your dashboard of your car going, hey, tire pressure's low. This is when it's bad. When you sit in your car and you just cry and you go, poor is me. And then you just sit in your vehicle and not drive it.
Right.
That is not what we're talking about. It's, oh, tire pressure's low. Get yourself out of the car and put some air in the tire, right?
Yep.
It should always drive to action. And these are just indicators. These are just indicators telling us that we need to adjust and grow and evolve. That's all. Not sit in the cab of the vehicle and just, cry and feel sorry for yourself because you have an oil change that needs to be done.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
I stole that.
Cool. Let's drive
totally
on.
Stole that from you. All right. Travis Gillis, how long does the IC Forge approval take?
It should be instantaneous. So the Forge is the place you go when you join the Iron Council, and you're going to spend about 30 to 60 days in there. 60 days tops. You should spend 31 days in there. The first 30 days are getting you onboarded with the Iron Council, up to speed, up and running, verbiage plans, systems, and then day 31, you can now join a battle team. So if you're not in the Iron Council, if you signed up for the Iron Council and you didn't get some emails giving you access to the Forge and the Foundry, which is where we operate, email membership, singular, membership@orderofman.com, and we'll get you squared away.
Yeah. And he might just be seeing the Forge as an approval process. It's really a onboarding process, right?
Yeah.
To ensure that you're successful.
There's no approval process for the Forge.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you join, you're automatically entered into the Forge. So there's no approval that you need from anybody. That's where you go when you get started.
Yeah. Josh Keller, tips for keeping a positive mindset in the increasingly negative world we live. As far as social media, politics, CRT, criminals getting away with more and more.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be realistic towards those things. I think if we just cover our eyes and cover our ears and bury our heads in the sand, that's a problem too. So we do need to operate in a realistic environment and world and recognize what's going on. But as far as staying positive, I also think that's important, and being optimistic and being hopeful and having goals and ambitions and desires. Alan Placer, who's a great member of the Iron Council, extremely successful, did a nice little presentation on Friday for us. And he talked about finishing your failure. And what we had talked about is that when your failure, in a way, at least I think, and this is how I interpret it, is that your failure is done when you stop looking at everything pessimistically about what's transpired, and you start looking at it optimistically regarding what you're going to do moving forward. So you lost your job, bad situation. Now, what are you going to do? Well, I got to go look for a job. Great. Now you're optimistic and you're moving into the future with optimism and hope. Maybe you're going through a divorce. All the things that you're doing wrong, all the things that went wrong, all the things that you did to cause it, you could dwell on that forever, and you're going to be very pessimistic about that. It's not wrong. You did those things. Okay, now what kind of man are you going to be? I'm going to be this kind of man. I'm going to build this home. I'm going to be this kind of father. These are the things I'm going to do now. And that moves you into an optimistic path moving forward. Gratitude is a big one. Look, I know everybody says write a gratitude journal. I personally have never done that. Maybe once in a blue moon, I'll write down, 3 things I'm grateful for. It seems like a silly exercise. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It just seems kind of silly to me. But I'll tell you one thing that I've really tried to do lately is I've tried to verbally express my gratitude to people. So Kip, I appreciate what you bring to this. I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate your professionalism. I appreciate the insight that you give to the guys. I appreciate how you serve other people. with my wife when she cooks a meal that I really like, or she looks very nice in the dress that she wore to church on Sunday. Hey, you look amazing. You look incredible. Like that, is that a new dress? It's beautiful. You know, or our pastor at church, he did a great Christmas Eve sermon. And on Sunday, I went up to him yesterday at church and I said, hey, you know, pastor, I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciated your message on Christmas last night. I wanted to let you know that. And so I've never done the gratitude journal thing, but verbally expressing my gratitude towards others. And by the way, why should they not reap the benefit of their hard work too, of their efforts? Because when I just write it and I'm like, I'm grateful for my pastor, he doesn't get to experience any of that. But if I go to him and I say, hey, I'm really grateful for you, not only do I feel better because I've expressed that gratitude and I have optimism in my life, he actually gets to partake in it. He gets to enjoy. And who doesn't like to be complimented? Genuinely, we all like that. It feels good. So that's something that I've done. The only other thing that I would say is you're going to be a product of your environment. So if your environment is negative, you're around pessimistic people who just like to complain and gripe and moan, that's what you're going to do. That's the culture that you have around you. So mix your environment up. Get into a different place. Sometimes guys will say, well, I'm stuck at work doing this. Right. So on your lunch break, be more deliberate about where you're going and spending time. Do you want to spend more time with those people on a lunch break if you're miserable around them? Probably not. I would think not. So go find different people to spend time with. And I think a little bit in a way through osmosis, you're going to start picking up on the positivity and you're going to start talking, thinking, acting, and behaving in a more positive manner.
Do you have any opinions about like taking in information, you know, kind of reducing how much news you get, or focus on things outside of your realm of control from keeping a positive mindset?
Yeah. So if you go and listen to the Friday Field Notes from last week, I talked about the pathway to emotional sovereignty. And we do have to have control. If you think about the word sovereignty, the root word is to reign. And I want guys to be able to reign over their emotions. So to me, if you're looking to the news and you're looking to the entertainment industry and you're looking to podcasts to get you all hot and bothered and outraged and upset, that's not really reigning over your emotions. You're allowing other people to rile you up and you have no control over it. So now they're the ruler of your emotions.
Yeah.
But if you are listening to certain information, hand selected, hand picked, which is easier than it's ever been, we can get exactly the kind of information we want. And you're listening to it with an ear of doing something about it, then you're not going to be so emotionally charged over it. It creates an emotional feedback loop almost. You get upset and then you're in your head and then it just bounces around and you're upset and you're upset and you're upset and you're upset and it never directs that energy. So on Wednesdays, I do homeschooling with my kids. I take Wednesdays and we do a science lesson on Wednesdays. We've had a lot of fun with it. We're talking about energy and how energy comes in many different forms, whether it's light or kinetic energy or mechanical energy, nuclear energy, a lot of different forms of light, heat energy, and how it can transfer, how it can pass through objects. It can be absorbed by objects. It can reflect through or from objects. That's actually what's happening when we pick up on all this stuff. We're absorbing it. It's just energy that we're absorbing, and it's negative and it's hostile and it's gross and it feels horrible. But if you take that and you decide to redirect it, because energy can change its form. So now we redirect that energy to something constructive and positive. It was good for you. It's great for you. But if you just absorb it and never redirect the energy, yeah, it's not going to be good. It's like light energy can transform to heat energy. And then if you have enough heat, for example, on a computer, what's going to happen? The computer's going to fry. It's going to become unusable, which is why we have fans in our computers to cool it off, right? Most people never cool off. They absorb all that energy. They get all heated up. They never cool it off. And then they just become toxic and gross.
Yeah. Kevin Pennell, how do you hold on to your faith in God when horrible shit happens in your life or in the lives of others close to you? Godspeed and thank you.
How do you hold on to your faith? Well, I think faith is a choice, right? I think faith is a choice. You have to choose to be faithful. And is it really faith if things are going well? No. It's easy to be faithful, quote unquote, faithful when life is good. It's really hard to be faithful when life is not good. And so I would suggest that, at least for me, the way that I've remained faithful or even developed a newfound sense of faith through hardship, whether those are external hardships or whether those are self-induced hardships, the best way that I have found to overcome that is by serving other people. And since you're talking about it in a spiritual perspective, God has given me some incredible talents. I was watching a video. We just got our rough cut video for the main event.
I've been waiting.
Legacy.
I've been waiting, man. I'm waiting. Every day on YouTube, I'm like, no, damn it, no video.
You know a guy you could just ask.
That's
but
true.
We got the rough cut video, and my first thought was our video editor is incredible, Todd Van Fleet, and Ken as well. They're both incredible. Like, they make it look really good. And my second thought was, I have a gift. And I know that sounds prideful, maybe even egotistical or arrogant, but as I watched that, I thought to myself, I have a gift. God has given me the gifts of being able to see who, like you and other people, need to be at these events, the way that we need to run them, the ability to communicate a message that resonates deeply with men and their sons, where we can rally them together and we can bring them to Maine and we can do these events and transform their lives. I have a gift. But you know what else I have? A lot of human deficiencies. Like, I could spend every day, all day, talking about all the deficiencies that I have in my life, all the things that I do wrong, all the ways that I take advantage of people, all the ways that I'm prideful, all the ways that I want to be lazy, like all the ways that I've hurt other people in my life, succumbing to addiction, which I've talked about over the past several months. I could write novel after novel about how inadequate I am. And yet God still said, you know what? In spite of that, here's some gifts that you can use to transform your life. And most importantly, and I really believe most importantly, in the lives of other people. So when you see something horrible happening, maybe it's a certain group of people, or maybe it's a certain person who's victimized or traumatized, serve. If you see some injustice in the world, do something about it. If you're personally going through hell right now, whatever that looks like, again, whether it's self-induced or external circumstances, then get on the phone with somebody who's also going through hell and talk to that person. Here's what I learned. Here's what I did. Here's what I'm still going through. Here's how I'm overcoming it. How are you doing? What are you doing? I got on the phone the other day with a friend, and I'll leave the details between him and I, but I know that he is struggling with some of the same things I'm struggling with. And in the moment, I felt like, man, I need to reach out to this guy. And so I sent him a text, and I just said, how are you doing? It's been a while. How are you doing? And he sends me a message back, and he says, well, just to get straight to it, here's what's going on. And it's a horrible, horrible situation. We're going through similar things. It's worse than my situation. Significantly worse than my situation. And in that moment, I forgot all about myself and all about my own woes and troubles, and felt more deeply connected to him. And then also, I felt really good about being able to serve him, even in some dark times that I'm going through myself. That's how you do it.
It's not to get too like spiritual, but like, it's light in darkness, right? And religiously, we know like the light of Christ is actually just love, which is a form of service. And it's amazing, you know, where we can be in a dark room, be in a dark area of our lives, and by bringing light into it, the room lightens up, and you create light through service, through loving and caring for other individuals, you know, and it lightens the room, regardless of the room, you know, whether it's your room or someone else's room, right? So, yeah, that's powerful. One thing that I, from Kevin's question, he says, hold on to your faith in God when horrible things are happening in your life, right? So this is kind of built upon the premise that horrible things are happening in my life. Thus, how can I believe in God, right? And for me, and I don't know, maybe I'm built differently, but I think there's two things that come to mind for me, Kevin. The first is that life, I believe, is just one part of the process. And so when I look at a difficult life, I can't, it's not final. It's not finalized, right? Life is just a step in the process. And so when I think about eternal perspective and why I have life and why I'm here, and it's to actually learn and grow, then I'm not gonna lose faith in God because life is difficult. And most importantly, how arrogant is it for us to think that growth is not made through sometimes life being shitty?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not how it works, guys. Like, and I know it's the default human behavior, right? Yeah, we spend our lives. Look at our lives. I look at my life. How much effort have I put into conveniences, making life better? I've spent probably hundreds of thousands of dollars around the idea of making life more convenient and fun, not more difficult. But yet, that's not the point of it. The point is for me to grow. And there is zero growth without difficulty. Just like the gym, there's zero growth in muscle without resistance, without struggle. There's actually zero growth in life without struggle. So who am I to say that I should be able to be like God and grow and become a better person without hardship? It's so naive, you know, but yet I'm not being mean, Kevin. I think it's a natural human tendency for us to seek comfort, but that's not how growth happens. And when shitty things happen, it's not a woe is me, you know, God did this to me. It's like, okay, there's a lesson to be learned. Don't waste the lesson. How do I grow from this? How do I become a better person? And most importantly, if it's super, super dark and it feels really, really like we're talking like evil, like really horrible scenarios, and we don't understand it, that's when I remember an eternal perspective and say, hey, life is just one step in the process. Right. And the game is much bigger than just life.
Yeah, it's powerful. I'm I'm reminded of that interview that I don't know how to pronounce his name, Shia LaBeouf or LaBeouf. I don't know. I need to figure out how to say his name because
I should know too, but yeah, I know
because I refer to this interview. But he did an interview on it's on the Real Ones podcast. It's the actor who plays the Punisher. I don't know his name either.
Yeah,
but
no, I've seen this episode because it resonated with me in a really powerful way.
It was one of the most powerful conversations I've ever heard. But he told a story that he had heard somewhere about, and I don't want to ruin it, but so just go listen. But the underlying message was this guy who had a son and bad things kept happening in his life. And every time something bad happened, he said, I can't call it yet. I can't call it yet. Like, I don't know if it's bad. You know, you lost your job. You can't call it yet. Like, your life is not horrible because you lost your job. You lost your wife. Like, you can't call it yet. You lost a child. Man, you can't call it yet. You're dealing with illness. The game's not over. How many times do we look at the scoreboard of life and think, well, there's a scoreboard. Yeah, but there's still time on the clock. Like that hasn't hit zero yet. There's still time on the clock. And even if you don't quote unquote win, why would you not fight to win? Why would you not fight to improve? So yeah, you might be going through a tough time. Other people might be going through tough times. Here's a great way to look at it. How many times in your life have you gone through horrible circumstances that you can't even remember right now?
And
They
at
don't
the
even
moment,
cross
they
your
were like
They were
devastating.
horrible. They were
Yeah.
life-ending tragic events, and you can't even fully remember all the details of it. 5 years later.
Yeah.
You cannot call it yet. So don't call it early. All right, what's next?
Well, and sorry, one thought. And it might be on you to rise up. Maybe your lot is to be an inspiration to other people. And you're not going to be if we don't grow, right? Here's a perfect example. I have my oldest son is the most saintly kid I know. Hearing loss at birth, and at this point, he's probably about 3% vision. He can't look at your eyes. In a conversation with him, it's gotten bad enough. He can look at my eyes or my mouth, but he can't see both. How is that fair? How is it fair? He's did nothing wrong. But yet he'll never, well, he has driven a car only because I'm a reckless parent, but like, you know what I mean? He'll never be a teenager that drove a car. A girl will always question whether, think about dating for him. A girl has to determine that when they marry him, what they're marrying. You don't think that hurts his chances of getting married?
Of course.
Doesn't hurt his ability to provide for his family, what kind of work that he can do? That's not fair. But if he sobs in his vehicle looking at the indicators of how horrible his life is and does nothing about it, then it's wasted, right? But if he looks at the circumstance and rises above it, maybe his lot is what? An inspiration to me, right? Maybe his lot puts me in check and puts me go, well, you know what, Kip, stop bitching and moaning because I have my vision every single morning. I'm reminded on a regular basis that I should be grateful for this one thing that I'm never grateful for. And that is the fact that I have vision. How often have we all woken up in the morning and was like ecstatic? Oh my gosh, I can see the world. How amazing. We don't. But imagine if he had his vision tomorrow morning. Tomorrow would be the greatest day in his life. But yet we have it every single morning and it's never the greatest day that we have. And maybe that's his lot, to serve as a reminder to us, of really what we should be grateful for.
Amen. Hey, one thing
Christopher,
I was going to bring this up about the lot in life, because I don't want to diminish that story. Because it's powerful. But I've heard a couple people use this exact verbiage over the past couple of days.
Your lot. Yeah. They're stuck with it. Yeah.
And I don't think you're using it the way that I have heard these other people use it. But what I will say is your lot in life, even if you believe it's determined, isn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what it is. So you get to decide, you get to choose. And I would suggest that if you're feeling down about it, like, well, I guess this is just something I have to deal with, because that's usually how people use
kind of like
lot.
throw your hands up with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would suggest to you that your lot in life is to serve other people. And it's to use your circumstances like your son. Use your circumstances to serve other people. That's, to me, if we're going to use lot in life, that is everybody's lot in life, is to serve.
That's what you do with
people. Yes, 100%.
I like it.
All right, what's next?
Christopher William Baker, what's your favorite spot, move, guard in jiu-jitsu right now? What are you working on? Feels awkward to go switch, but
yeah, I feel myself going to neon belly quite often. Into like baseball bat choke is something I'm trying to get more efficient at.
Yeah, from neon
belly to baseball bat choke, and trying to hand fight for that position. Because people like guys that have trained, like when guys start wrapping your collar up, they know, okay, he's going for a choke. So like how to slip your hands in to get that baseball bat choke And then I noticed I did it to a guy that I've been training with, Eric, fairly new to our gym. He's been training for 3 or 4 years. He's a handful, more than a handful. And, I tried the baseball bat choke, but he would like wrap his leg around my neck and pull me back. So I'm like, oh, I got to change that because I can't expose my head that way when I'm doing this baseball bat choke. So the knee, I really like the knee on belly. I think it's, it's painful. And I think it's a little mean spirited, which I kind of like because you're just trying to drive your knee. Yeah. You're just trying to drive your knee into their solar plex or into their chest as hard as you possibly can. And I kind of like that. I mean, that's a pressure game anyways. So that's what I'm working currently.
Yeah. We have a guy, Jason South. That's like his game. His
Is
game
that right?
his game's like knee on belly the whole time. He'll surf. He'll be riding you the whole time. You're shrimping, you're moving. He just switches knees, and the whole time you're just like, ah.
What?
And it's beautiful, man. It's an art up there. I like that game. Yeah.
Actually, the other one that I'm working on,
perspective, you get leverage.
Sure.
Like you could be throwing bombs. Like
punches.
It's a good space to be.
It's a good position.
Yeah.
For you and me, and for a select few of our friends, the other position that I'm really trying to work on is what we affectionately refer to as the perch. So we'll just leave it there. I can't tell you what it is.
Coming out later.
But when you and I roll, just know I'm going to try to perch. All right. Shout out to Clint and Mike and John. Buddies. Who else was there? There was like 6 of us, 6 or 7 of us. Taylor was there.
Yeah, Taylor. Yeah.
So
I'm working that as well. It's great stuff.
Yep. What are you working on right now?
I love dogfight. I've been working that dogfight more. So
what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
So from a knee shield where you're hip to hip, knee to knee, and I have underhook, and most guys are doing a wizard.
Oh, got it. Wizard. Got it.
Wizard.
Yep.
It's that dogfight. I like getting into that dogfight position.
Yeah.
With that underhook from bottom. Yeah.
I like that.
And then what's available there? Like there's the triangles from there. Kimuras.
Yeah, I could see how that
sweeps.
A triangle, you'd pull guard essentially, right? You'd pull guard and swing your leg around. Yeah.
Yeah. Come into the dogfight and then go back for the triangle. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been trying to, I don't know, tell me what you think of this. I've been trying to bait arm drags for back takes. So they'll cross over to get for an arm drag, and I'll time it correct to get their back
and take their back instead.
Take their back. So that's one thing I've been working is to try to actually bait it. Like I'd like you to grab my arm and try to arm drag me and then step around.
Go ahead and pull me to your back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I've been working too.
That's fun.
Yeah. Cool.
Baby Koa starts wrestling tomorrow.
Awesome. How old is he?
I'm so excited. He's 4.
4. Perfect age, man. Perfect age.
It's going to be so fun. Like I'm like so ecstatic about how this is going to go.
Wrestling, like formal training class for
wrestling
toddlers. Got it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We'll do that for maybe like a year or 2. And then we'll slowly get him into jiu-jitsu, but they start wrestling at 4. So I'm like, oh man, let's do this. Like, and that's all he's doing all the time anyway. Just running around wrestling with everybody.
If you take 2 guys, both athletic in their own right, one played football, one wrestled, let's say, or one played basketball, one wrestled, or whatever. Like a wrestler in jiu-jitsu because they understand the physiology, they understand some of the moves, like the comfort level of being that close to another man is not an issue. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that wrestlers have advantages over when they step into on the jiu-jitsu mats.
And you know this, even just from an athletic perspective.
Absolutely.
There's a mindset with wrestlers that just don't exist in other sports.
100%.
They've pushed their bodies in ways that other sports athletes have not done, and they just show up differently. I don't know. Wrestlers just different.
I mean, you just think about you think about what the objective is compared to other sports. So soccer, kick a little round ball into a net. Basketball, take a ball, throw it into a hoop, and you get a point. Football, run that ball across that yardage and you score. And if you have more points at the end, you win. Wrestling, dominate that human being one-on-one and see if you can put his back on the mat. Jiu-jitsu, strangle that guy until he passes out or taps, or try to break one of his limbs. It's different. It requires a different mentality. And I'm not saying that football players aren't athletes. Soccer, we can make that argument. But football, basketball, yeah, sure, athletic. But there's something different.
And that's why it's so humbling. That's why, because you can't hide behind a team.
No,
nothing. It is the closest feeling to mano a mano. I kill you, you kill me. I am better than you. Right? Like
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly. It's not even close to like, that's what it is. It's a martial art. That's exactly what it is. I can kill you better than you can kill me.
Yeah. And that sucks sometimes.
Totally. All right. What's next?
All right. Bob Ross, what ways to help your children understand that Christmas is more than presents?
Obviously we're in the Christmas season. I have thought about this. Obviously, I could give you the answers of read the scriptures, talk about Jesus, and all that stuff. And that's accurate. This starts well beyond Christmas though. If you're having that discussion with
Christmas
your kid,
season. Yeah.
If you're having that discussion with your kid about like, hey, remember, it's not all about the gifts, but what did you open up this? I mean, how are you going to compete with that? When you say it's not about the gifts and then you go out and you spend $2,000 on gifts and you ritualize this whole opening of gifts in the morning, it's really about the gifts.
It's pretty centered. Yeah. It's pretty centered around the gifts. Yeah.
Yeah. So my wife and I were talking, we actually really liked Christmas this year because it fell on Sunday. And so on Saturday evening,
said the same thing.
Did you? Yeah. On Saturday evening, we went to a Christmas Eve worship. That was cool. I don't think I've ever done that before. And then Sunday morning, we went to church service and that was nice. Like it was nice.
Yeah.
My kids are going through in homeschooling with my wife, a program called Connected Christmas. And so every day or every lesson, they read a scripture and they have an assignment, they have a craft, and then they have study some artwork and they have a poem. And it's all centered around the message of Christmas as it's told in the Bible. So it's Christmas. Like it's actually Christmas. Christ, Mass, Christmas. But again, it all starts before the Christmas season. I mean, you got to go to church. You've got to read the scriptures. You've got to pray together as a family. You've got to talk about why Christ is the Redeemer of the world. You've got to talk about why his birth is so important. You have to celebrate Easter and talk about the resurrection. You have to actually do all of these things. And then you create the traditions and rituals around Christ. Oh, and by the way, presents are also cool and fun. And we can do that. And it's giving and it's important. But we keep Christ as the center. Why is there an angel on the tree? Why is there a star? Is it just because it looks pretty? No, it actually means something. There's a reason we use the star or the angel on top of the tree. What is it? Why do we give gifts? Where did that originate?
Yeah, I like it. William Matt Kofer. How do I start finding a dream or goal? I'm having a really hard time finding a purpose. I have a career, a fairly decent one, but it's not something to push towards. I know I'm supposed to be doing something different, but I have no idea what or how to find it.
I would suggest, without knowing you, that you are not being as good a steward over your current position and resources that you currently are or could be.
Like magnifying what is right now.
I mean, listen to what he said. He said, I'm in a current position, but I know it's not important. Or so what did he say? I want to hear it again.
I have his career, a fairly decent one, but it's not something to push towards.
What does that mean? It's not something to push towards? Sure it is. Of course it is. What do you mean? I don't even know what you do, and I have no idea what you mean. You're there. You want to be there. Now, maybe you just want to be there for the paycheck, and I can understand that. But you do want to be there for a reason. It's not something to push towards. So what are you going to do? Run away from it? Run towards what? You don't know, because that's what you're asking. So I would suggest that the first thing that you do is get rid of that nonsense about this is not something to push towards. Because when I hear that, I hear this is not something I want to exert my resources and effort towards. That's not a good way to live. You're there. Okay. And I don't know if you're going to be there for a month, a year, 10 years, or for the rest of your life, but you are there. Imagine saying that in a relationship. Hey, man, I'm just not really happy in my relationship, and I just don't want to push myself anymore. What a horrible thing to say. Like, you're there. Why don't you try to magnify it to say what you just said? Why don't you try to really exert yourself? Why don't you try to make the most of it? Create new opportunities, create new programs, look for problems, come up with solutions, serve other people, show up early, leave late. Like, you're there. And I'm not saying for the other company, I'm saying for you. Do all of those things that happen to serve the company, but it's for you and your family. And you know what happens when you exert yourself? Things. That's what happens. When you exert yourself, things happen. So you're going to start exerting yourself fully at this job. And then somebody's going to walk in and they're going to say, hey, you know what? We're actually hiring over here and we're looking for a sales manager. And I have just been so impressed with the way that you've shown up for the past 6 months on our current account. Are you interested in applying or interviewing for this job? That won't happen if your attitude is, there's nothing to push towards. It doesn't happen. Things start happening when you become the greatest possible steward over your own resources. People will say all the time, oh man, I just wish I had more money. Why? You can't even manage the money that you have. What makes you think you're going to manage more of it? It's harder. It's harder to manage more money. It requires a different skill set than you currently possess. So I would submit that if you want to make more money, then you learn how to get out of debt. You learn how to be frugal. You learn how to track your expenses. You learn how not to buy things that you can't afford. To take a clip from Steve Martin. If you haven't watched that little clip from Steve Martin on Saturday Night Live, don't buy things you can't afford. You should listen to that. It's funny and hilarious and true. And when you get a hold of your finances, then the world or karma or the universe or the muse or God will say, I can see that he handles that pretty well. Let's see how he does with a little bit more. Yeah. And you will always be given more if you magnify what you currently have. Always.
I love this so much, Ryan. And I can't, I look at the stories that you've shared about how, because I think you're acting in your purpose, right? There's good alignment between your job and what you love and your natural talents. That was made possible through a job that you had that you weren't enjoying. Yeah. And you were like, how do I do this really, really well? And through that process, you found interest, passion, skills got presented, natural talents got presented, and alignment starts happening. And it's the same for me. Like I'm a computer guy, right? I went to school for computer information systems, right? I was supposed to be a programmer. I'm in a part of my life where I'm the furthest that I would have ever imagined from programming. But that was only made possible because I showed up as a programmer in a unique way that was aligned with my talents. And someone went, geez, Kip, you're really kind of good at these other things and maybe not so good at programming, you know what I mean? And let's make some natural transitions, and they just kind of happen. And it's amazing. Like, at least from my perspective, I can't help but even look at my current employees on my team and the best employees and the best people. It's not necessarily always the skill set. It's their work ethic. It's how they show up. It's their passion. It's their humility. Those are the kind of people that you latch onto as a manager and you go, man, I know I could give him anything. And he would excel at it because the way he works. Opportunities just blow up for those kind of people. And I'm just saying the same thing you're already saying, Ryan, just a slightly different way. I can't help but see the evidence in so many areas of my life, in your life, and my life, where opportunities to us for quote unquote purpose and alignment was pretty much set through good work ethic and having passion in doing what was given to us and addressing and tackling what has been our current lot or our current jobs and positions.
So what's this gentleman's name?
William Kofer.
So William, here's my challenge to you. And this will go back to that accountability question that we had from earlier. Here's my challenge to you. I know you're not asking for accountability, but you're asking for an answer. And I think this will help. My challenge to you is that it's December. By the time this will be released, it's December 28th. So that means let's just say January 1st, January, February, March. My challenge to you is that at the end of March, so March 31st, is that you submit another question in this queue for this podcast, and you tell us that you have exerted yourself fully. You have magnified it. You have looked for problems. You've come up with solutions. You've served other people. You've taught, you've trained, you've served, you've done all of it as best you can in your current position for the next 90 days. You can do that for 90 days. And then you come back to us and you report your findings. Is your life better? Is it worse? Is it the same? Is it like, tell us everything. How do you feel? Any opportunities present themselves? Did you get fired? Like, tell us what actually happened. We want to know what happened in that 90 days, but you have to commit to fully exerting yourself for 90 days. You can do that.
I like that.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up.
All right, gentlemen. So you call to action, really, you have roughly about a week or so to join us in the Iron Council. This is our exclusive brotherhood. This is where you get out of the spectator. I love using that analogy. Get out of the bleachers, stop watching the basketball game, join us on the court, be an active participant in your life, band with like-minded men. That is a guarantee. The men in the Iron Council, and Ryan was alluding to this earlier, the guys in the Iron Council are there because they're committed to becoming better men. We're on different paths, different levels of success, but one thing you're certainly going to get is like-minded men. We don't have that problem at all. And it's so powerful what we have in the Iron Council. Battle teams meet at different times. You have plenty of options to work within your schedules and be part of a battle team where you're holding each other accountable. You're committing to showing up more powerfully in this coming quarter and have guys that are willing to stand for you in a very powerful way. So go to orderofman.com/Iron Council to join us, and we'll be starting roughly in about a week in that particular cohort. So join us and get rolling. Other than that, connect with Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler. And that's it. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Kip. Appreciate you, man. Always do a great job. And it's always a good time talking with you because I learned things from you too. So powerful stuff. Guys, I hope that helped. I hope we answered some questions. You have your marching orders, especially for William, I believe was his name.
Yep.
You have been specifically been called out. So I hope that you take us up on that challenge because I know it'll serve your life well. And for the rest of you, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.